Hey there, Justin here. Do me a favor. Take a moment to think about shopping at your local grocery store. Maybe there's an enormous selection of all your favorite foods at a great price. Maybe you don't want anything to change. Maybe you wish that your grocery store had a better snack selection at lower prices. How much do you think your government influences what you see on your grocery store shelves? Probably a lot more than you think. In today's lesson, you will define markets, describe the tools that governments use to influence markets, and describe the relationship between the values of a nation's government and the type of market it has. In our previous lesson, Citizen and the Nation State, we learned that citizens organized themselves into nation states and then created governments to run those nation states. Everything should run on its own now, right? Actually, the hardest part is yet to come, because citizens, as human beings, have certain needs and wants. Some of these are fundamental, like food, shelter, and security. Others are harder to put your finger on, like wealth, freedom, and social connection. Where can we go to meet these needs? To the market, of course. Defining markets. Let's talk about the food in your grocery store, and maybe an apple. How did it get there? Well, somewhere a farmer decided they wanted to grow some apples, harvest them, and sell them to your grocery store. That farmer answered the three fundamental economic questions: what to produce, how to produce it, and who to produce it for. A market is a place where goods and services can be exchanged. These can be physical places, like the grocery store, or non-physical spaces, like the internet. While citizens and businesses conduct trade in the market, the government has a pretty big responsibility as well. The government provides stability for the market to exist and ensures that business can be conducted securely. The government wants to make sure that the needs of its citizens are being met. If you think back to Citizen and the Nation State, you'll remember that a nation's citizens give the government its authority. If your needs aren't being met, if you don't have access to those things you need to survive and thrive, you might consider taking some sort of action. People have protested, governments have been voted out of office, and revolutions have toppled entire political systems because people felt their needs weren't being met. Let's pause for just a second to show what you know. What is a market? What are the three economic questions? Why do you think that a government wants to make sure that the needs of its citizens are being met? Government tools that influence markets. But how do governments influence markets to meet the needs of citizens? Honestly, it's kind of like walking on a tightrope. There is a delicate balancing act. You definitely don't want to make the wrong move, and you certainly need all the right tools. When dealing with the marketplace, the government has three main tools: fiscal policy, monetary policy, and regulation. Fiscal policy refers to the decisions that governments make about how to tax citizens and where to spend that money. For example, our government taxes citizens' incomes and uses a portion of that money to build infrastructure projects like roads, bridges, and airports. Producers, folks like farmers and factory owners, want these projects because they make it easier and cheaper to get their products to the markets. Consumers also like these projects because they make it easier to get to the market, and there are more diverse and less expensive goods sold there. In the United States, differences in opinion about fiscal policy make up a large part of our political discourse. Check out the lesson PDF to take a deeper look into some of these differences. There are some times when citizens want and need certain goods and services, and private businesses don't meet those needs. In these cases, the government uses fiscal policy by using your tax dollars to step in and meet the needs of citizens by providing what we call public goods. Public goods are goods or services that private companies can't or won't provide to a market because they're too expensive or there's too little profit. Some examples of public goods include education, police and fire departments, and sewer systems. Another tool that governments use in the marketplace is monetary policy, which is how the government controls the flow of money and credit into a market. Here in the United States, the government often lends money to citizens to start up small businesses. These loans are a form of credit designed to help private businesses better meet the needs of the community. Check out the lesson PDF to learn more about the Federal Reserve System, which enacts monetary policy in the United States. The final way that governments interact with the market is through regulation. Regulation is when governments enact laws and create agencies to ensure that citizens and businesses are following practices that keep the nation healthy and safe. When you're thirsty, you may go to the sink, pour yourself a glass of water, and drink it without a second thought. That's because as a nation, we have decided that clean drinking water is essential. In all levels of government, there are agencies and inspectors whose job it is to make sure that you have clean and safe water. Grab the graphic organizer on page 4 in the PDF and something to write with so you can show what you know. What is fiscal policy? What is monetary policy? What are regulations? If you need to pause the video while you answer the questions, that is totally okay. The relationship between government values and the market. Throughout this course, we will talk about the values of different governments, things like individual rights, civic participation, and open discussion of issues. So, what is the relationship between the values of a nation's government and the type of market it has? Generally speaking, a nation's market is a reflection of the political values of that nation. In liberal democracies, the government celebrates individual liberties, encourages civic participation, and values open discussion. In these nations, the individual citizen answers the 3 economic questions. In more authoritarian systems, the government holds the opposite political values. In these nations, the role of the government, not the individual citizen, is to answer the 3 fundamental economic questions. But most importantly, as citizens make decisions about what they value and how much authority to give the government's relationship with the market changes. That means if you see something in the marketplace that needs to change, you have the power to begin the process of making that change. Grab a sheet of paper and get ready to show what you know. How do the values of liberal democracies differ from the values of authoritarian governments? How do those differences in values impact the way governments interact with the market? If you're not sure, make sure to go back to the previous section in the video to review. Recap. Today, we defined the term market, described the tools that governments use in the market, and finally, we described the relationship between the values of a nation's government and the type of market it has. So, next time you're about to grab some apples at your local market, don't forget to thank the government for helping to get that apple to you. In our next lesson, we'll begin to look at constitutional governments, those liberal democracies where you, as a citizen, get to help answer those important economic questions. Have a great day, and remember, vote, debate, and participate.